Okay.
So, hello everyone. This is Julie Bartkowiak with Olive Hickmot today. We've just been having a really good chat actually over on Zoom. So we had to sort of stop there and move over here. And I'm really hoping that you'll enjoy all the pearls of wisdom that Olive has to share. She really is amazing. I want to first of all share my book with you because this is the Facebook book launch tour so that you can all be aware of it. The book does not actually contain specific mentions of learning differences, which is what Olive specialises in. But as she was saying this morning, which before we came on, that everything goes back to sort of anxiety and all the things that the book does talk about. So my book really talks about sort of underlying issues. But of course, all of these things will have implications for children at school, which is where Olive comes in with all of her brilliant expertise. So I'm really not going to say anything more other than please pop your email address in the comments to enter the raffle. And Olive is donating a couple of her excellent books. She might share those with you while she's talking or at the end. And I'm just going to hand you right over to Olive right now. Okay.
And you're more than welcome to come back with questions either on Facebook or Julie come back with questions and I'll do my best to answer them. So welcome. Thank you for inviting me to this. I've known Judy for years. I think we shared a publisher at one point. And so it's great to be back here again. My name is Olive Hickmot. I'm a forensic learning coach and trainer and an author of, I've got up to 7 books now, all called New Perspectives. So they look like that with new perspectives written on the top of them. I'll tell you about them later. But before I talk about what I do, I'd just like to mention Judy's latest book and go, I had a really quick look through it yesterday, and everything in there is going to be useful for people with learning differences anyway, because a lot of the people with learning differences or learning difficulties, as they like to call them in school, or neurodiversity, which is actually the modern expression for them, are quite often full of anxiety, full of stress, and quite often it may come from actually being in school and getting things wrong all the time, or it may come from further back than that, of things that have always been going wrong in their life and it's just sort of popped out when they come into school. Learning differences you should consider really as like speaking another language. You know, if you're trying to have a conversation with somebody who speaks French and you speak English, you're going to go into anxiety. And so if you continuously do that, then you're going to build up more and more stress and more anxiety. And learning differences is just that you're learning in a different way. You're thinking in a different way. And the schools aren't geared up for this at the moment. And so I'm going to give you some introduction to what I call the elephants in the classroom, the things that are being left out of education. On page 124 of Judy's book, I found the communication model, and that talks about about all your senses, so visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, and how you observe those in the outside world. But there is also about how you observe those in the inside world. Now, when I started this work, we used to talk about visual learning, and we found that when I say visual learning to a teacher, they think in their head visual teaching, because that's what they're taught to do. They're taught to teach visually. So they are really good at showing pictures of things and getting children to listen to things, but they're not doing anything about what their internal mental imagery is doing. Now, what is your internal mental imagery? So when you think of your loved ones or your car or your dog or your cat, you get pictures in your head. That's your internal mental imagery. And 20 years ago, I was doing some NLP training, and they mentioned that about mental imagery, and it really resonated with me because I thought I hadn't got mental imagery. And so, and when they said you use it, people who are good at literacy use it for visualizing words, I basically said, you do what? I had no idea that people had this ability. And just think for yourself for a minute, just to try it out, is that when you go to spell the word giraffe, you how do you know how many R's and how many F's? Because what it sounds like isn't really going to help you. And the answer to that question, before you spend the rest of the session working it out, is that there's one R and two F's. And so I was amazed. I was amazed. I was furious. And it started a whole new career for me, because I had to, having found this out, I had to learn how to teach myself. And at the same time, I'm learning how to teach kids how to do this little trick. And so there is an expression in NLP land that if something doesn't work with an NLP process, you take it apart, put it back together again until it does work, and then you develop it further. And that's exactly what I did. I walked into, my journey started with my local special needs school, which happens to be up the road to me. And I gave one of the deputy head teachers who I knew socially a call and said, have you got anybody who can't spell? I think I've just learned something that could be useful. This is literally 2 days after I was taught it in 10 minutes. I'm a bit of a cavalier. And so they said, yes, we've got hundreds of these kids who can't spell. Which ones do you want? And I went, well, I'd just like a few, please, to start with. So I started working with these kids 15 minutes a week for about 3 or 4 weeks. And firstly, I couldn't, it didn't work. So I had to change it so it did work. And the second thing was I couldn't believe what I could do in just a few weeks. We took the worst child, I think, was that we took the child who couldn't spell anything, couldn't even write down a letter. These are secondary school kids, by the way. So he couldn't write down A, B, C. It wasn't in his ability. We took him from not being able to do that to spelling yogurt forwards and backwards in 4 weeks. And that was just so spectacular. I always say one of the best things about NLP is that if you have the worst client, and the same thing will be for Judy with Matrix and EFT, the worst client is the best one to have because they have the most dramatic changes. And so I drafted a note to give to the teachers to explain to them what I was doing. And then that turned into my first book. I had never any intention of writing a book. I would have been dyslexic if I had been younger, but they hadn't invented it in my day. And I'm probably pretty ADHD as well. But I've learnt how to, I've learnt everything there is to know, if you like, about dyslexia. And from the point of view of neuroscience and how it works and what the mistakes are along the way. I've taught thousands of people, and I've trained about 750 practitioners worldwide. So we've got it being used in New Zealand, Australia, and America. And there's always a challenge about how do you get schools to take it on, because they think it's not the thing that they're being told to do. But actually, it is so simple, it is remarkable. During lockdown, I did lots of snippets on my YouTube channel, which is Olive Hickmot. And those were all shortish 10, 15-minute snippets of discussions with people or telling you how to do particular aspects of it. And during October, I did, October was Dyslexia Awareness Month and also ADHD Awareness Month. And so I did daily success stories, which you'll find up on my YouTube channel, all 31 of them. And so you can go along there and just have a look. They are less than 5 minutes each of what people have achieved. And I moved on to working with ADHD and the whole of neurodiversity and continuously moving forward. My brain is like a jigsaw puzzle. It continuously moves forward to add more bits and pieces into what I've learned. And so that's about my journey. But I wanted to sort of tell you some of the important elements of what I do. And so there is a picture. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that picture?
No,
sort of.
No.
Anyway, having done this for many years, and I've worked with hundreds of kids and adults. There is 5 or maybe 6 really important aspects that that are the basis of what I do. One is safety. Children have to feel safe in order to learn anything and in order to think. And so if they're feeling unsafe because of childhood trauma or things that are happening in school or whatever it is, if they're feeling unsafe, they are never going to learn. You probably all know, if you've got a child who's trying to do some homework, it's a disaster if they're really stressed out about it, because they're not going to learn, they're not going to be able to think. And the couple of the things that really made a difference to my practice was learning about being grounded and how to be grounded. And that's not being sent to your bedroom when you're being naughty. That is about how you feel fully connected with the planet. There is also breathing, which was came to me about 18 months ago now, is that how badly we breathe. And it happened to me because I had been ill and I thought I'd better do something about my breathing, but I hadn't realized that most of us are, or a large proportion of us are mouth breathers. It is much, much better to be a nose breather, which means breathing in through your nose, out through your nose, and right down into your belly. And the children that we've struggled with to get grounded over the years have definitely been mouth breathers. And there is a statistic in America that 70%, around 70% of kids with ADHD are mouth breathers. And nobody's telling the parents and nobody's telling the schools that if you can convert them to being a nose breather, they are in the relaxed state rather than in a stress state, excuse me. And it not only affects them during the day when they're breathing, but also it affects them when they're sleeping at night. So safety was a really big thing that came along, and a lot of what Judy does is about that safety part. The next section is strengths. When you look at how a child is learning really successfully, which they might be doing anything, they might be learning to ride a bike, they might be following a particular passion of theirs with Minecraft or with dinosaurs or whatever it is. Look at what they're doing really well. Some people are now calling this superpowers because some of them do it just amazingly. And my question always to them is, how do they do what they do? And so you look at building Lego, for example. These kids can so often build Lego without the instructions. So how are they doing that? The reason is they've got a picture in their head of what they're building, and they're just making all the Lego bits fit. And almost all of the learning differences have a really, really strong visual, mental imagery behind them. There's a few exceptions to that, like playing the piano or something, which isn't particularly visual, it's probably more auditory, but most of it has got really high visual strengths. And all of the creativity stuff that kids do so easily when they're young, then those are their strengths. And those are the things that nobody's teaching them how to do creativity. They're just seeing pictures in their head and they're drawing them. And okay, to start with, they might be making a mess of drawing them, but as they get better, as they get older, they'll get better at being able to put it on paper. Being grounded is absolutely essential. And if you're not grounded and you're trying to do mental imagery, then you tend to have a whole load of different symptoms. For example, you can have, if you all try this, just think of a rabbit for a minute. I don't know why I picked rabbit this morning, but think of a rabbit, and what color is it? What color is it in detail? What can you see? How big is it? Has it got a white fluffy tail, or is it something else? Has it, and now is it still or is it moving? That's really important, because if you're trying to visualize something and it's moving, then it's really quite difficult. Okay, you can watch a rabbit running around the field in your mind, but if you want to start spelling words, you need to be able to keep them still. And so a lot of children who have got various versions of anxiety, the pictures go past so fast. My worst example was who's in one of my YouTubes in the last month, was the lad who, when I said to him, can you picture a dog? He goes like this. And I said, what are you doing? And he went, I don't know, but it's not very comfortable. And so I got him more and more grounded. And eventually he got a picture of a dog. And what had happened was his picture was moving so fast. It was like the television screen. You know, in the old days, when you turned on the television screen, it was all black and white spots. That was exactly what he got. He wasn't tuned into the channel for mental imagery. And within half an hour, we got him to get pictures. And he said it was so much more comfortable. He lived like that. He was 8 or something. He lived like that for his whole life, of having these spotty things flying around, and he'd no idea what they were. So controlling mental images is absolutely essential, getting them to you to be able to consciously control them rather than them controlling you. And a lot of the people who are on ADHD or on the autistic spectrum have got completely uncontrolled mental imagery, which drowns them. ADHD kids tend to have mental images that go, I'm talking about the Eiffel Tower. They've now moved on to the centre of Paris. Now they've gone on the cross-channel ferry. Now they're in London, and now they've gone to Arsenal to watch their football match. And so you're still talking about the Eiffel Tower, and they're in Arsenal. And you wonder why their middle name is Distraction. It's because they have this amazing ability to go chung, 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 chung. And of course, it's a nightmare skill when you're in school, because that's not what the teacher wants you to do. Whereas if you become an inventor or somebody creative, or you're in work, it's probably a fantastic skill to have, because you can see connections, which is quite superb. Whereas with autism, it gets to be even worse. On the ASD spectrum, they tend to be drowning in mental images. So basically, they want to sit in a corner and play with their toys and just have nothing to do with anybody else in the world. And it's because of all these mental images flying around. But this is why my last book's called The Elephants in the Classroom. This is not talked about in class. We do not mention mental images. We mention showing people pictures, but we don't do anything about what their mental images are doing. And the more stressed and more anxious they get, the more chaotic their mental images become, until they have meltdowns or whatever. And of course the environment, just being in a calm environment where the kid can concentrate and not be overwhelmed by either what's going on in the outside world or what's going on in their inside world. And so that's what The Elephants in the Classroom is about. And I'll put in your on Facebook my email address, which is olive@empoweringlearning.co.uk. Anybody is welcome to phone me up or contact me and ask me questions about this, because I've been doing this for the last 20 odd years, although I've been dyslexic for the last 70 odd years. And I'm only too pleased to help people. And you will find my website at empoweringlearning.co.uk. And there is an associated blog which you can get to directly by Olive Hickmot at .co.uk. And on the blog, there is loads and loads of things, useful stuff. And there is the URLs for all of the recent 31 success stories. And I do really recommend people look at the success stories, because they're so short and they are They're all true. They're all kids that either I or one of my practitioners have worked with, and they are remarkable stories of how quickly people can change. So Judy, would you like to ask me any questions?
Well, I was hoping that you might show us just the essence of how to do a visual spelling exercise, because you explained about the rabbit moving and stilling the rabbit. And then if you could just say what one does after that in terms of doing the backward spelling. Was that possible?
I'll do it with a cat, for example.
Of course.
What you do, first of all, is what we found out was that the best way to get, sorry, I'll go back a minute. If I say to you, picture a cat, right? Everybody's pictured a cat. If I say to you, don't picture a dog, you've probably now all pictured a dog and now you're trying to rub it out. So the best thing to do, so we automatically, if you say a noun to somebody, they will try and picture it. That is a normal reaction. So if you just think of a cat for a minute and think of what color it is, what color its paws are, its eyes are, its whiskers are, etc. So have a really good look at your cat. Now, some people may have glorious Technicolor cats. Some people may have black and white. Some people may have cartoon cats like Garfield. Any of those will do. Or if you fail on any of those, just, you know what a cat looks like. Everybody knows a cat that's got 4 legs, for example, and 2 ears. So what you do is you just get an image to start with to work from. And then you start learning object words. So you put on a Post-it. I haven't got a Post-it here, but you take a Post-it, you write cat on it, and you hold it up between, so you're looking at a cat, and you hold the Post-it up between you and the picture of the cat with cat written on it. And then I say to somebody, when I take the Post-it away, you'll see cat written along the side of the cat. Not underneath it, not above it, not on the other side of the card. You want to see cat written on the cat. So every time you think of a cat, you will potentially have cat written along the side of it. So now you can spell it. Now you can see it. You can spell the word cat. Then you can change the color of the letters. Don't let the letters be the same color as the cat because they'll disappear. And so you can then spell it in reverse order. So that proves to the person that's trying to help that you can actually see it, because you can't spell easily phonetically in reverse. You have to see it. It's not very good doing it auditory. So that's how you do that. And then you move on to longer and longer words until you've got all the way up to elephant, for example. So you can now see an elephant. You can spell it forwards. You can change the color of the letters and you can spell it in reverse order. So now the next thing to do is the next question, which always comes up from parents and teachers, is what about the words that haven't got pictures? And so we then have a really neat trick, which is, so imagine a swan with swan written on the side of it, right? Now, most people have got mini whiteboards in school, so they know what a mini whiteboard looks like. So let the swan drift away and put the whiteboard behind the letters. So you've now got swan written on a whiteboard. Then you can spell it forwards, you can change the color of the letters, and you can spell it in reverse order. Now rub it out and hold up a word which is also, or some non-noun word, and put that on the whiteboard. And so you can then see also ALSO, change the color of the letters, OSLA. Right? So that's how, and then you build up longer and longer words. There is several big problems going on in school because they don't take notice of mental imagery. One is they're teaching children non-noun words really much too young. So you've got high frequency words, which most parents hate, which are in reception year, in high frequency words, we only have 4 words which are nouns: mum, dad, cat and dog. The other 46 are non-nouns. So you haven't got anything to help your brain go to the right place. Whereas the way I teach it is, if you are doing noun words to start with and build up your confidence on noun words, then you will continuously improve those, you'll get those neural pathways working so that you can actually see the word. And then you can move on to non-noun words, because by that time your brain will have got the idea that this is the way we're doing things. So that's how we do it. And it's, so that's how you do spelling. There is, sorry, I was saying the things that we haven't got right in school is that we're teaching non-noun words much too early, which are, it's just a piece of history that's a real shame. We're obsessing over phonics. If a child hasn't got phonics by the time they get to 7, it's pretty accurate to say that they're not going to get phonics terribly well. What I teach is word recognition, which should be the last stage of phonics. So as a child goes up through doing phonics, they should migrate automatically to word recognition. And that's talked about in the book. That's the place where word recognition happens is the back of your head here. Phonics happens in the front. So what you're doing is a new word comes into phonics and it should get decoded, but then it should pass over to the visual part of your brain. And that's the thing that's not happening. And another really simple trick is reading. Don't read looking down. One of the things that NLP learned decades ago was that when you're looking up, you're in your visual field, which is exactly what you want for, and will be in Judy's book, I'm sure. Up is for your visual field. When you're looking sideways, you're in auditory. And when you're looking down, you're in emotions. So what are we doing? We're telling our kids to look down at the table to read. And what happens? They're miserable because they don't think they can do it. So they're going to be right. If you hold the book up there, you can have the most remarkable changes instantly. Don't look down when you're reading if you've got a child who is nervous, anxious, stressed, or whatever it is about reading. So there's some really simple things like that that can be implemented instantly by parents or by schools. This isn't therapy. This is about understanding how the brain works and working with it to get the best results.
That's lovely, Olive. You're just such a fund of information and knowledge and experience, and it's just wonderful to listen to you. I could listen to you all day. One thing that I don't think you mentioned, which I'm sure some people will be interested in, is that you do train people in what you do.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you can buy her books, but also you can actually, if you're a teacher or you know a teacher who'd like, or indeed you're just interested for your own self, you know, Olive is a trainer in what she does. And so please get in touch with her if she's fired your imagination and you think, I would like to know all about this and to spread the word. So that's...
Can I just, I'll show you the books. That's The Elephants in the Classroom, which is the most recent, which is about primarily at primary schools, because it's really simple stuff that people ought to know in primary schools. That's the previous one, which is called Bridges to Success, which is similar but wasn't targeted at primary schools. And there is an old one called Seeing Spells Achieving that people may have seen, but that one is a little bit out of date, to be quite honest. Those first two are going into Judy's prize draw. And I'll also say, if anybody wants to email me for a copy of my book, You Too Can Do Health, during lockdown, a lot of these were moved out of warehouses because they had a stock of them. And they said, do you want them back or do we put them in the bin? And I went, no, I'll have them back. So anybody can have one of these, You Too Can Do Health, which is all about NLP and health, for free if you want, if you just email me.
Thank you very much, Olive. Just before we finish, I'd just also like to mention a couple of books that are published by the same publisher as publishes my Engaging NLP workbooks and who publishes Olive's books, which is they were written by me for the Kennel Club Spark and Read scheme to encourage children to feel more comfortable reading in schools. The idea being that Danny, the therapy dog, is there in schools and you can stroke Danny. Now, a lot of you will have dogs. Loads of people got dogs, didn't they, in lockdown? You know, if you've got a child who's perhaps a bit nervous or uncomfortable about reading, Just encourage them to read to the dog, stroke the dog or cat, and read to the dog, because for them, the perception is that the dog won't judge, won't criticize, certainly won't correct. So they can read to the dog and feel more relaxed and stroke the dog. I think that's true to say, isn't it, Olive?
I tell lots of people to do that. I got over my 35 years of performance anxiety of reading when my son was born, and I decided to read to him Winnie the Pooh. And I just thought, I can't have a child who's going to go through what I did. And that story is, I think, number 30 on my last month. And the first thing I did was I started reading Winnie the Pooh, and I was stumbling around all over the place, but he didn't care. He was having a cuddle, and he wasn't able to talk. I mean, he was much too young to criticize. So there was zero performance anxiety. And that's what changed my ability to read aloud, because I just relaxed, and I hadn't realized there was so much stress was making me so stumbling so much. And so, great solution. Read to the cat, the dog, the fish, or another baby if you've got one that's handy.
Lovely. Well, thank you. We better finish there. Thank you so much, Olive. Let me just also remind you of my book. And I'm going to put a link up actually as well to, I think it's called the bookshop.org, which has just started, which enables you to buy from your local bookshop that might be closed. It's a really new thing that's happening. So,
I'll put a couple of links on the Facebook page that I was just talking about earlier.
Lovely. Okay, thank you all very much indeed, and
Thank
hope
you.
you've enjoyed it. Okay.
Thanks very much, Judy. Bye.